Hello everyone, welcome to Level Change channel. Today we are going to talk about the simulation features on the 737 developed by Pmdg for Microsoft Flight Simulator. This video is part of a series of videos about all the options that we have for this airplane, and because of that I created the document that you can see on your screen right now. I call this document Pmdg 737 options video list. So here you have the list of all the options available on the 737 with the hyperlink for you to go direct to the video that you want. Okay, so for today I'm going to talk about simulation. So this is the simulation video, and basically I'm going to show you most of the options that we have into the simulation tab. Okay, I'm not going to talk about today the callouts, okay, because the callouts will be subject to first officer video, and I will not talk about the IRS options as well, because this is going to be on the inertial video. So today what you can expect is for me to talk about service base failures, engine oil use last, sync captain and first officer EFIS, sync captain and standby BARO, set MSFS lock course, realistic autopilot engagement, show thrust lever position, auto throttle manual override, high idle in flare, pause at top of descent, auto time compression, TCSR button, autopilot disconnect on control input, hide captain or hide FO seat, hide captain or hide FO yoke, yokes move when lowered, and steering hardware type. Okay, I really want you to pay attention to some of them, okay, that will improve your simulation itself. So a couple of things that is nice for you to know are the sync options, like the sync captain and first officer EFIS, and captain and standby BARO. Also this auto throttle manual override, show thrust lever position, realistic autopilot engagement, and maybe this one, autopilot disco on control input, because those things will change your flight. As well, the last one is steering hardware type, especially if you are having problems controlling the airplane on the ground. Okay, so let's start our video today as we go again to the flight simulator, and here on the flight simulator we go to our cockpit. Okay, here in the cockpit, when you go to your CDU menu, Pmdg setup, aircraft, sorry, I'm so used to go to aircraft. Now you have to go to options and then simulation, and you have a couple of pages here, and we are going to talk most of them. So the first is service based failures. You have here the option to take it as on or off. I already talked about the service based failures when we were talking about aircraft and failures, and here in all systems you will see that the service base failures prompt is also here. So it's the same thing, it works the same way, and I will leave the card as well on top of this screen for you to know about the failures if you still don't know how it works. Okay, by the way, I'm clearing all the failures now. So once again, Pmdg setup, options, simulation. The first option was covered on the failure video. The second option is engine oil use less. You have the option on and off. I do like the option as on. What this option is doing, actually when you fly you are going to use some oil from the engines. Okay, so the engines eventually they will use some of the oil. Actually you are going to lose some of this oil based on all the factors of engineering. Okay, if you leave this to on, you will reach the next flight with the previous amount of oil that was in your engines. Okay, if you set it to off, okay? Then every time you start a new flight, you will have 100% oil again on the engine, okay? So I do recommend it to keep it on. Then it's something that you have to have a look before your flight. And if you do need anything related to maintenance, once again, you go to menu, PMDG setup, aircraft, failures, and here in the all systems, you will have the option to see the maintenance and what you have to do about maintenance, okay? So I do recommend you to keep this simulation option, engine oil use last, to 1, so that you will have to take care of your engine oil quantity as well before departure. The next one is sync captain and first officer EFIS. Here you have a couple of options. Okay, the EFIS is electronic flight instrument system, and here what this setting is doing is that this is what we call EFIS control panel. This is the EFIS control panel. So you have one EFIS control panel for the captain for the left side, and on the other side you have one EFIS control panel to the first officer. Okay, what this system does, it synchronizes some of these buttons. So let's say, for example, you want to change your altimeter setting. Right now it's 1020, as you can see it's 1020 on the right side as well. So if you want to change 1020 to standard, you press the standard button and it changes. And if you have it synced, it's going to change on the right side as well. Of course, if you do it on the right side, it changes on the left side. So everything you do on the left is going to work on the right. Not all the buttons, the specific buttons that you selected. In this case, I selected the BARO and the minimums, which means this button here for the minimums, okay, and this button here for the BARO. So every time I set my minimums on radio or BARO, and every time I set my barometric reference for the altitude in inches or hectopascal, this is going to be synchronized with the other side, okay? So you are synchronizing both sides. The options are then the BARO and the minimums. No, so in this case, when you change something in one side, it just change in one side, like the real airplane. This is the way it works on the real airplane, okay? I'm giving you the example for the altimeter, but this is how it works in the real airplane, okay? The next option is only the BARO, so it's going to be only your altimeter setting, not the minimas. So if I have BARO and I set it to standard, now you see both sides change to standard, back to 1020, but the minimums, I just show it on the left side and on the right side is not there, okay? And vice versa. If you only keep BARO, so only the right button will be working. The other option is BARO and minimums, the one that I do recommend you to keep it on, okay? Because then you don't have to do the job twice. You just set your BARO and minimums on your side and will be automatically set on the other side like the other pilot was going to do it, okay? Of course, if you are using your controls to fly into different airplanes, or actually into different places, like you are in your place and your friend is at his place and you are both controlling the same airplane, maybe it's good for you to change it to no, so each one will be responsible for its side like it is in real life, okay? But if you are flying alone, I do recommend to keep BARO and minimums synchronized in the captain and the first officer EFIS control panel. The next one is sync captain and standby BARO. It's going to do pretty much the same thing, but now it's going to do it between the captain altimeter and the standby altimeter. So anytime I change something here on the captain side, like standard, you will see that the standby goes to standard as well. Okay, so I'm going to change the captain again to 1020, and as you can see, the standby goes as well to the current setting. Please note that it only changes the number itself. I have CWS row here. I'm going to go back to heading cell just to fly around. So notice here that it only changes the setting. It doesn't change the scale of it from hectopascal to inches. Okay, so this is something that you still have to do by yourself. So if you have hectopascals and you are flying hectopascals, you have to come to hectopascals like 1020, and now anytime you press the standard, it goes to standard, and time you press the standard again, it reverts to 1020, and it will be 1020 here. Okay, if you have it in hectopascals, it still does. Okay, it's synchronized, but it doesn't change from one to the other. So make sure on your pre-flight you have the same scale for hectopascal or inches on the standby altimeter and on the captain side. Of course, when everything is synchronized, if you change it on the first officer side, sorry, 1021, I want 1020, as you change it on the first officer side and it changed it on the captain side, then the captain side changed as well the EFIS control panel. So all of them are synchronized if you use both settings as yes. And once again, if you take it as no, then all the changes you do here, sorry, my mistake, I need to go back to map. So all the changes then that you do on the captain side, like you put standard now, it doesn't change to standard on the standby one. You have to do it manually. Okay, so one more time, and then if you want, you synchronize 1020 here, standby on the other side. If you take it as yes, it synchronizes again, and you have everything working the same. I do recommend you to keep all of them as BARO minimums and yes, so you will have the option to change your altimeter only one time and all the rest will be done. The IRS option is something for another video, the IRS video, the inertial video. So now on the second page we have set MSFS lock course. This is something related to the navigation data on the Microsoft Flight Simulator. This is not me telling you, this is the Pmdg documentation that recommends you to set this to on and keep it on, as you may have some differences between the Microsoft Flight Simulator database and the real world. So it will always set to the Microsoft Flight Simulator localizer course, and you will not have any kind of issue during your flight. So in this case, when you are here and if you select an ILS approach, you will see, let's just change our route here, LPPT. For example, if you go to Porto and then departure and arrival, if you select any ILS here, you will see that now you have the ILS frequency and course. So this course will be based on the Microsoft Flight Simulator course, and you will not have any kind of issue. You can copy this frequency and this course for your ILS approach. Okay, you also have the option to take it as off, as it would be in real life, but in this case, if the localizer course for the Microsoft Flight Simulator and the real chart does not match, you will not have your airplane correctly aligned with the runway. So as Pmdg recommends you to keep it on, I think that's something that you should do, even though it's not the most real selection. Is something that it's going to be hassle-free for your ILS approaches. The next one is realistic autopilot engagement, and you have again the option on and off. Basically, for the 737, for you to engage the autopilot, two things must happen, or actually three. The first one is that you need to have your current pitch and your current lateral angle align with the flight director, okay? Pretty much align. It doesn't need to be 100%, but you need to be somewhere there. If you have like the flight director telling you to maintain a straight and level flight like it is right now, and you are banking like 25 degrees to the right, the autopilot will not engage on the real airplane. This is the first action for the real autopilot alignment, engagement, sorry. The second one is that you must be in a balanced condition. I will use the word balanced because actually the manual says that you must be in trim, okay? So you must be in a in trim condition, but it's like the flight director, it doesn't need to be 100%, but at least you need to be in a balanced position. So pretty much you have to release your yoke and then engage the autopilot. A little bit of pressure pulling or left or right is not a big deal as long as it just a small amount on the trim and you have your autopilot, or sorry, your current airplane flying pretty much what the flight director is telling you to do or what you select on the flight director. And the third one is, of course, then you press the autopilot command A, command B, or CWS A, CWS B for it to engage, okay? So it's up to you. I do like the realistic autopilot engagement, and I will try to show you right now. I'm going to disengage the autopilot, okay, and I'm going to keep it like this. So now, even more, let's take to 30 degrees bank, and now if I try to engage my autopilot, it does not engage. As you can notice, it does not engage, okay? So now I need to go back towards my flight director, which is now to the other side, and now I can engage my autopilot. As you can notice, it just engaged in command, and you need to give him a pitch, which is altitude acquired now, which is fine, okay? So this is autopilot engagement, the realistic mode. You need to be following your flight director, and you need to be in an in-trim condition. The next one, it's very important, is not something realistic. Again, it's something that Pmdg created to try to comply with a couple of things that we have on the 737 in real life and we cannot simulate on the airplane, is the show thrust lever position. Show thrust lever position is going to show the thrust lever position on your hardware, okay, on your joystick itself, okay, or in your throttle control, the one that you have at home, okay? This is not something that you have on the real airplane, okay? So for example, right now the auto throttle is commanding 62.8% of N1, but on my joystick I have my joystick throttle in idle, okay? And I'm going to show that to you. So I have my joystick in idle. If I take the show thrust lever position to yes, you will see that now we have a blue range between my current position in the joystick and the actual position for the auto throttle. So if I start to advancing my thrust lever, my real one, my hardware on, you will see that the blue starts to go up and the gap between my current position and the N1, it is going to go down until the point, if I go above, it's going to show that my hardware itself, my real thrust lever, is above the current N1. So this is very useful for you, for example, during the approach when you want to disconnect the auto throttle, so you don't know where you have to position your thrust lever. You just go to match both of them like this, and now you can disengage auto throttle. I'm going to disengage the auto throttle right now. Auto throttle is disengaged. As you can see here, auto throttle is disengaged. And now I move my thrust lever, and this is manual thrust now. Okay? So once again, now I'm going to engage the auto throttle engaged, okay, and then you will see that we already have a difference between the auto throttle commanded N1 and my current N1, which is stable at the last position I left. So if I take now my thrust lever here, the real one, to idle, you will see that this is the difference. So if I disengage my auto throttle now, okay, I will have the throttle going down to idle. Okay, so I'm going to engage the auto throttle again, and it's the same thing if I had at maximum thrust. I will set at maximum thrust. I'm going to disengage the auto throttle, and any movement that I do, the thrust goes straight to my hardware. Okay, so auto throttle engaged, and then this will help you every time you want to disengage the auto throttle. Just bring them together and you are able to disengage the auto throttle without adding or losing any thrust. Okay, so it's up to you. I think it's really nice, it's a good feature, but as I'm not used to it and I want to show my followers the real displays, I take it as no. Okay, you also have the option to show when moving. Okay, so right now it's not showing anything, but when I move my lever here, it's going to show this what is the difference between them. Okay, so this only works when the auto throttle is connected, and I didn't know that we had the option to when moving, and I think the when moving is quite nice because I can adjust as much as I need when I'm moving my auto throttle, especially when I'm close to the ground, when I want to disconnect the auto throttle. So you also have the option when moving. Okay, the next one is also related to the auto throttle, is auto throttle manual override, and here we have three options. We have the option never, we have the option always, and we have the option throttle hold and descent arm only. On the real airplane, we have always. Okay, this is always. Anytime you move your thrust lever, it doesn't matter if the auto throttle is connected or not. Every time you move your thrust lever, this is going to change the thrust lever position and the thrust on your engine as well. Okay, you need to be careful with this, because if your joystick is sending any spikes on the thrust itself, you are going to have those spikes happening on your thrust control. So this is like the real airplane. Anytime you move on your physical joystick, on your hardware, this is going to change the thrust as well. But like in the real airplane, if you have the auto throttle connected, it will change while you are moving or while you are holding, and once you release, it's going to go back to what the auto throttle commanded. So in this case, I have the auto throttle on and I set it to always. So if I take my thrust lever now to idle, you will see that the lever goes to idle. But as I reach idle and I do not move anymore, then the auto throttle is going to command whatever it is for the auto throttle. Okay, now I'm going to push my thrust levers full forward, and you will see that they go in the direction of full forward. As I stop moving it, it goes back to what the auto throttle think is the correct one, and this is like the real airplane. Okay, it's pretty much what it is in the real airplane. The only difference is that on the real airplane, if I push full forward and I keep pushing full forward and I do not let this go, it is going to give me full forward. Okay, on this one, if I just release like I'm holding it there, it doesn't understand that I'm holding, and then the auto throttle goes back to what it is supposed to be. Okay, that's why I do not like the always mode. I do like the mode throttle hold or descent arm only, because in this case, anytime you have an active auto throttle mode here and it's not throttle hold during the takeoff and descent arm during the descent. You can move your thrust lever, the physical one, as much as you want. It's not going to change. Okay, so now I'm going to move my thrust levers. Notice it doesn't go to any side, even though now you have the blue one showing where is my physical one, but the auto throttle is commanding whatever it wants because I'm not on these two modes. Okay, on the other side, if I keep this and now I start my descent to 5,000 feet, let's say 5,000 feet, and I'm going to turn to the left side here. Okay, so now I change to 5,000 feet and I use level change. Level change is going to retard the thrust all the way down to idle. Okay, it's doing it right now. When it reaches idle, this is going to be armed. We are going to see arm in a couple of seconds here. So the retard disappear and the auto throttle will be armed. Here we go. So auto throttle arm. That means now the thrust lever is at idle and the auto throttle is not going to change my thrust lever position until I select a different mode. In this case, when we have then descent arm, this is the case, or during the takeoff throttle hold, now anytime I move my thrust lever, it accepts. So I have manual control of my thrust levers right now. Okay. So this is up to you. You can have the control always, or you can have the control only when the auto throttle hold mode is active, or when you have the arm mode during the descent. If you take it to never, then it doesn't matter what I do with my thrust lever. It should never override this function. Okay, so the options, they are, once again, always. So this is like the real airplane. Anytime you move your physical throttle, it's going to move the engines on the airplane as well. The throttle descent, the throttle hold or descent arm only on those two cases, and the last one is never. So it do not work with your thrust lever when you have the auto throttle connected. Okay, so I do recommend the throttle hold and descent arm only, but it's up to you. Now you know what are the differences and you can control your auto throttle override function. The next one is high idle in flare. What happens is when you are in the landing configuration, the idle for the engines, it increases. This is to help during a potential go around. Okay, so every time you are flying landing configuration, there are other cases that this idle, it goes above the standard idle. Okay, we call it high idle. So also when you use engine anti-ice, for example, so those situations, they will increase the idle of the airplane. Okay, so in the real airplane we have the ground idle, which is a very, very low idle. We have flight idle. This is the one that we are experiencing right now. The thrust levers, they are in idle, so we have something like 32. And also we have high idle for certain conditions, like when you are using engine anti-ice or when you are in landing configuration. Okay, so due to a limitation on the Microsoft Flight Simulator, the Pmdg allowed you to select this high idle in flare here to on or off. So that means you will have the approach idle working or not. Usually it comes as off. Okay, it's like the approach idle is not working. Okay, this is not the most real one, but Pmdg says that if you keep it in on, you may have a delay when extending, when deploying your reverses, because then the Microsoft Flight Simulator is going to do something like this. When you start your flare, it's going to keep an high idle, a virtual high idle, and then once you touch the ground, then the engines, they have to spool down to the standard idle before releasing the reverses to work. Okay, so this is the difference. So on the real plane, yes, you do have high idle in flare, okay, but it also allowed you to take the reverses from this high idle. In the Microsoft Flight Simulator, this is not possible, so if you keep it as on as it is in the real airplane, you will need to wait a couple of seconds before applying your reverse thrust. Okay, usually, as on the 737, we have manual thrust for landing. I think that if you keep it as off, is not a big change. And during an automatic landing, if you follow the flight crew operations manual limitations, especially the ones related to the wind, you will see that the airplane can land the airplane really fine, even though the high idle in flare is not active. Okay, so I do recommend it to keep it as off, but you can try as well with on, and that maybe will help you with the landings if you are still doing hard landings. Okay, because you will have a little extra energy when you put your thrust lever to idle for landing. Okay, so now it's up to you to decide, but I hope you already know what are the differences. The next one is something that I'm going to leave to the first officer video. I call first officer video because all these callouts, they will be done by the first officer, not the airplane itself. Okay, and then we can go to the next step, which is pause at top of descent. Okay, this creates the option for you to set the airplane to always pause the simulator when you reach top of descent. This is very useful if you are going to start your flight and maybe this is a long flight, you want to do something else, because in cruise phase you are not doing anything and you just want to come back and do the descent, approach and landing. So you can keep the pause at top of descent to yes. So when the airplane reaches top of descent, it's going to pause your simulator, and then once you come back to the sim, you will be able to do your descent. Okay, the airplane will not descend, and the airplane will also not go beyond the top of descent, leaving you high during your approach. Okay, so I do keep it as no because I'm always in front of my sim. I never do long flights. Okay, but if you think this is something that will help you not to miss the top of descent, you have the option to set it as yes. The next one is auto time compression. We have on the Pmdg an option, and this is the option auto time compression, to increase the simulation speed up to a certain amount of time. But this auto time compression, was created by Pmdg to choose between normal speed, 2 times, 4 times, up to 8, up to 16. Okay, so you have 2, 4, 8 and 16. Here you are setting the maximum compression time that by default is 4 times. Then if you have the auto compression working, the airplane will try to accelerate up to 4 times in this case, or 8 or 16 or 2, but it will always reduce anytime Pmdg feels that the flight director is not complying with the route or with the altitude. Okay, because as you accelerate your simulator, maybe this is more than the autopilot system can handle in normal conditions. So then if this works, for example during a turn or during a descent, then the Pmdg will bring the compression to a lesser rate until you reach normal compression time, and then the airplane goes back to the route, go back to the altitude, and then it accelerates again if it can. Okay, so this you are just setting if you want to use auto time compression, what's the maximum speed that is going to happen. Okay, and then to use the time compression, okay, you have to select on the next line here the TCSR button to auto time compression. When you have the auto time compression, then this button here on the clock, TCSR, every time you click it up, it changes to green, and now the airplane is accelerated up to the amount of time you selected here, in this case up to 4 times. And as you can see, it's going to do its job up to 4 times, sometimes reducing to 2, sometimes going back to the normal, depending if the airplane is following what you are intended to follow. Okay, anytime you want to get out of the time compression on the same TCSR button, you just click it down and then it goes back to the standard. Now you can see that based on the white indication. So every time you have green, you have the auto time compression working. Every time you have white is the normal time, one time. Okay, for the TCSR button, you also have the option, instead of auto time compression, you have the option to select direct sim rate control. In this case, when you press it up, it goes to 2 times. This is marked by the yellow time here. If you click one more time up, it goes to 4 times. If you click one more time up, it goes to 8 times, even though it doesn't change the color. And if you take another one, it goes to 16 times faster, even though it doesn't change the color. But you can see here from the simulator that is going really fast. Okay, like we are now flying very, very fast. Okay, so this is the maximum, 16, and it doesn't go beyond. Anytime you are in 2, 4, 8 or 16 and you press the down button here, it reverts back to the normal time. Okay, like now we have 7:55 in white, showing that we are in normal time again. Okay, so this indication will give you the option to direct select the sim rate from the TCSR button, okay, or to set what is the auto time compression. Then once again, auto time compression, the maximum will be based on the upper selection, and you activate it with the up arrow and you deactivate all the systems with the down arrow. Okay, the next one is autopilot disconnect on control input. This is like the real airplane. Let me bring you the yoke here. So on the real airplane, if you make a huge displacement or a big displacement, I will not say huge, a big displacement on your control wheel or your control column, the autopilot is engaged. So in this case, I'm going to pull the yoke without disconnecting the auto throttle, okay, in my physical hardware. And as you can see, it disengaged the autopilot. Okay, so this is the real autopilot behavior. Okay, you have to keep your yoke pretty much centered, okay, or allow the yoke to do what it's supposed to do. Okay, if I take, let's go to disable here. Okay, now I can move my yoke. I'm moving my yoke right now, and you do not see the yoke moving. Okay, because when the autopilot is connected, then my physical hardware is not working anymore. Okay, so the same thing that we had for the auto throttle. Okay, we have now for the autopilot. But for the autopilot, the option is only yes or no. So when you call it enable, okay, if you are if you just take over control from your yoke without disconnecting the autopilot, it will take it. Okay, now it's enable again. I'm going to make a right turn, and as I do a right turn, it disengage my autopilot. Okay, so I'm going to come back, and I'm going to engage my autopilot again. Okay, so this is the real behavior of the airplane. If you move the yoke, it disconnects the autopilot. So it's up to you. Once again, if you are having spikes from your joystick, okay, if it's not working properly, then maybe if you take the autopilot disconnection on control input to disable, it will allow you to remove this problem that the hardware is causing to the sim. Okay, I do recommend it to keep enabled, but if your autopilot is constantly disconnecting, or if you are not able to connect your autopilot, try to disable this function and then try again, and maybe it's going to work. The next one we have is hide captain seat and hide first officer seat. I'm only going to show you the first officer, but it works the same thing for the captain. So as you can see right now, if I'm seated here, I do not have any seat. If I take the hide FO seat to no, okay, then you have the first officer seat there. The same thing for the captain side. Okay, this is as yes. If I take it to no, then you have the captain seat. I do not like the seats itself, so it allowed me to freely move on the cockpit. This is the same thing for the yoke. Okay, you have the hide captain yoke and hide first officer yoke. Actually, for the yoke, it doesn't hide, it just lowers the yoke itself. So I will take hide FO yoke to no. You will see that it goes up and it moves. It moves the way it is on the real plane. So if I make a right turn here, you will see that the yokes are moving like the real auto throttle does. It moves the yoke to give the feedback to the pilots what the autopilot is doing. Okay, so on both sides. Okay, this function for hide captain yoke and first officer yoke also works yes and no when you click on the yoke itself. Okay, so note that I have hide FO yoke to no. If I click on the yoke, it lowers automatically and it changes to yes. It's the same thing on the captain side. Right now is no. If I take it, click on the yoke itself, it lowers and then it changes to yes. So you have the option to come here on the simulation to hide or show the yoke, and the same thing on the yoke itself. And then the next one, it's information that if you want the yokes to move when they are lowered, okay, because when they are up in the up position, you see that they move. Okay, usually when you lower them, they stay at the standard position. But if you take as yes, then you will see the throttles, the yoke moving even though they are in a lowered position, or what PMDG calls when they are in a hide position. Okay, so I do keep them as no, so they do not move when they are down, they only move when they are up, and usually I keep them down so I have a better view of my displays. Okay, so this is just a visual setting for you to select the seats and the yoke for captain and first officer, and you also have the option then to move the yokes yes or no when they are in the lower position. The next and last one is the steering hardware type. Here we have two options: rudder only and tiller plus rudder. On the real airplane, it's tiller plus rudder. So you have controls of the rudder through your rudder pedals, and this also gives control of the, and let me take it down. It gives you control also of the nose wheel up to 7 degrees to each side. Okay, so once again, if you have tiller plus rudder, the rudder pedals are going to move the rudder itself and the nose wheel steering, or the nose wheel up to 7 degrees to each side. This 7 degrees is enough for takeoff, landings, and even for taxi on straight lines. Okay, but this is not enough to make turns. So if you have this configuration, then you make turns on the ground using the tiller. The tiller is this piece of control here you have on the left side of the captain. As you can see right now is center. You have the option to take it to the left and to the right, and this tiller will give you control up to 78 degrees turn for the nose wheel. Okay, so usually on the real plane, or not usually, on the real plane you have these two controls separated. One is for the rudder and the other one is for the tiller for the nose wheel. Okay, so this is like on the real airplane. But on your sim, if you want to do it like this, you have to have two axes, one for the rudder and another axis for the tiller. Okay, or you have to select something for the tiller on the control options here, and I'm going to show you the control options. You can even use the keyboard. So this keyboard is flight control surfaces, and I'm not sure if is secondary control trimming surface. Yeah, I think it's on the secondary control trim surfaces where you have, no, it's not on the secondary. Let me find, yeah, steering is on the miscellaneous. Okay, I will never find it. So in the miscellaneous you have the option to set the steering. This set steering is like taking the steering to the neutral position. The increase steering is when you take the steering to the right, and decrease steering is when you take it to the left. If you have an extra axis, you can always use nose wheel steering axis, and then you are going to select an axis here. So bring it, try to search steering Sierra Tango Echo Echo Romeo India November Golf, and this gives you all the options that you have for the steering. So you need to have something for your steering on the control options here if you want to use the information tiller plus rudder. So then you will have like the real airplane, the tiller and the rudder separated. If you do not have this option, you can always select rudder only. So now at this time, the rudder pedals, they are going to control the rudder itself, and they are going to control the nose wheel up to 78 degrees, not only to 7, up to 78 degrees. So you have the full deflection of the nose wheel only using the rudder. What is the problem about it? The problem about it is that during takeoff and landings, the rudder, they are very sensitive. Okay, very sensitive. And if you are dealing with crosswind takeoff and landings, okay, especially the landing is the most difficult part, because you will need a certain amount of rudder to counteract the wind, and then most probably this amount of rudder is more than you need for the nose wheel on the ground. So once you touch down, you will see the airplane going left or right until you are able to fine-tune your commands. Okay, so I do recommend, if you have the option, if you have an extra axis, to set tiller plus rudder and work like in the real airplane. If you do not have, keep it rudder only, but note that with especially crosswind landings, you will have the airplane going left or right during your landing row, because this is just something that PMDG cannot control if you do not have two axes. Okay, so this is very, very important. Most of the people, they don't know it because it comes with the rudder only option. This is the standard option on the PMDG, and then the people they taxi the airplane using only the rudder. That's not the way we do in real life. We have to use the steering itself. But if you do not have another axis, or if you do not want to set some sort of keys binding to this tiller, okay, so once again, this here is tiller plus rudder, but once you go to the Microsoft Flight Simulator in control options, you have to search for steering. Okay, so this is steering, is the settings that PMDG calls tiller. Okay, and of course rudder is the standard rudder indication. You can even search here by rudder, and you will see that you have some buttons to have auto rudder and rudder on, off, and even here for the control surfaces trimming, rudder trim left or right. And I do use my rudder on my sidewinder force feedback. I have a rudder axis, which is the axis Zulu. Okay, so you have all the options for the rudder, and you also have the options for the steering. Okay, as I do not have another axis for the tiller, and to simplify my work here, I keep it in rudder, even though this is not the real information or the real way that we do on the airplane. Okay, guys, I hope you liked this video. I hope I was able to explain you the simulation options, and I think those options are the options that will allow you to better fly the 737. Okay, this will give you access to some throttle and yoke controls that, if you do not have a good hardware, it may be interfering with your airplane, and even interfering, for example, with the autopilot engagement, and so on. I hope you liked the video. I hope now you know how to turn on or off these settings. I will ask you to please subscribe to this channel, share this video with your friends, and I see you next time. Bye bye.